Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Please get out of the new one if you can't lend your hand, for the times they are a-changing.
Welcome to Occupy Cafe. Welcome specifically to Occupy Heart, our weekly, now Thursday call. And Occupy Cafe, our mission is that we are here to serve and to expand not only the Occupy movement, but the notion of what Occupy actually is. From our perspective, our Occupy movement includes anyone who has a mind and a heart for social justice, for social change, for expanding ourselves into being a world that actually values, respects, and works for all. So welcome. The topic today is 1 year later. What's changed for you? In a little bit of context setting. And so Monday was live from Occupy Wall Street, because that's where Ben was, our generally co-host and co-founder of Occupy Cafe. He was down in Lower Manhattan in the midst of the demonstrations. And what we were aiming to do on that day was to basically take the temperature of the Occupy movement. Where are we a year later after the birth of it? And it's very interesting, but people who basically whose main sustenance is mainstream media, most people have the impression that the Occupy movement is basically dead, or living on life support. And the mainstream media, as we wrote in our discussion thread, seems relatively committed to reporting Occupy as an obituary. And yet, as we engaged in our call Monday, and we had, much like today, a remarkable cross-section of the entire country out of a dozen or so people, and from what we heard, Occupy is alive and very well. And it's that, one of the questions was, does the numbers attending the demonstrations, is that really a viable metric of the health of Occupy, or have we kind of matured into this realization that perhaps it's not so much quantity but quality of action? And indeed, what we got from around the country was that it is about quality, and there are some very fiercely focused initiatives going on that range from zeroing in on foreclosures, protecting people's right to be in their homes and not be displaced by illegal actions by banks. Some strong initiatives for generating and illuminating common ground. There's some very strong community initiatives and actions. There are people that are focused in exploring alternative economy, from alternative currencies to time banks to all sorts of movements of that sort. And also some very concerted maturing is going on, in that where at first Occupy was paranoid in a way of being co-opted by other movements and other organizations. In fact, Occupy, many of the Occupy participants are opening their arms and embracing labor organizations. What can we do for labor? Just hearing from Anita, the focus on labor, specifically labor with regard to teachers in Chicago, but labor in general, being in solidarity with labor organizations, and also with getting money out of politics. So that was the thrust of Monday was, what has been the nature of change of Occupy through the year, and where is the movement emerging? And today, what we're looking at is, because Occupy Heart is different than the Vital Conversations. Again, Vital Conversations is looking outward. Occupy Heart is about looking inward, because we recognize that at the very core of any movement, at the core of the success of any movement, really has to do with the consciousness of the people engaging. You know, where are we coming from? How are we engaging? And hopefully, as we go along and Occupy matures, if it is to mature, it's going to embrace a cross-section of ideologies and positions, but fundamentally uniting in taking back the commons, in a sense, at least taking back respect and compassion for people and our planet as a whole. And so Occupy Heart is devoted to uniting at the level of our heart, you know, of our care. And so today, 1 year later, what's changed for you? So how has the Occupy phenomenon impacted your life personally?
Let's see, we've got Mark. Let me just turn your mic on here, Mark. Okay, you're all set to go, Mark.
Yes, I was thinking about this movement. As a journalist, you know, I had to do a lot of articles about it, and it's a many-faceted jewel, and there's so many dimensions to it and so many different personal experiences. So I actually think that that's one of the strengths, and my personal experience is that I've been drawn to what I would call an altruistic, nonviolent mainstream movement. Now, I know a lot of people don't look at it in those terms. They see it as a political movement, but I was saying during our breakup discussion that it seems to me that there is a heart to this movement and a spirit to this movement that transcends all politics and religion and all of the amazing limitations that have held us back from ourselves and other people. So I think it's basically there's a spirit to it, and that's why it was really difficult for the corporate media to explain, because they're looking in terms of money and power politics, and so they don't understand what's really happening in all of these communities and in this national and international community, because I also feel that spirit connected to the Indignados movement in Spain and the folks in Greece and Tunisia and all over the world who are fighting for peace and freedom. So the amazing thing to me about this movement and my personal experience has to do with the heartfelt spiritual aspect to it, and how that has been really the center of what's been going on. And here in Seattle, when we got together for the Occupy Wall Street anniversary, it really was very obvious to me and most of the other folks there, I think, you know, that's because this is what we were talking about, is that we're drawn to each other and we're drawn to this movement because it provides an emotional and spiritual benefit to our lives, and not always an easy path, because it forces us to confront our own prejudices and limitations. But when we were out on the street and all the corporate news reporters were trying to ask folks, you know, why are you here? What's this about? I think that the underlying sentiment was, we're just glad to see each other and be together. You can call it what you want, but there's a lot of love in this movement, and so that's my experience of it, is that there's a lot of long meetings where we talk about logistics and spend a lot of time with mental exercises, but in reality, it's a heartfelt spiritual movement, and I don't think anybody can really explain it, or it's a transformative time in our history in the world and in this country, and we're the beginning.
Oh, thank you, Mark. That was great. There is an energy in these times that is actually calling forth the inner transformation, and that's in order to create that outer transformation in a very integrous way. Beautiful. Daniel, your mic is open.
All right, Mark stole my thunder, so I'll use little lightning.
You're going to do the lightning.
His quote was, we got to get into the power of important. We're not after money, fame, results. In fact, Sam might agree. We're just here to be of service. The results might not even turn out the way we expected. Sure didn't turn out the way I expected in the '60s. We've been waiting to see this happen again, so we've come into another cycle. I think a lot of us have been waiting, and we have some sort of intermission of change, and not just for the sake of change, but change for the better.
Change for the better, yes.
Your visible positive impact. How would you describe yourself in the wake of that, Mark?
Well, what came out of it for me was this idea of this paradigm shift, and part of that comes from I'm really amazed by the diversity of styles and approaches of all the people on this, and I think that's indicative of society everywhere and the Occupy movement. So it's just amazing to see how we all as individuals have a completely different style and take on what's going on and how we're approaching it, and yet it's like this gestalt where the sum is larger than the whole is larger than the sum of its parts, because somehow when we come together it all works. And part of that is also that I think we're learning in this movement how to respect each other. But the paradigm shift comes from last year when we were opposing the man, so to speak, and standing up against authority and opposing the power structure, to this year having empowered ourselves over the last year, working together as a community, and having empowered ourselves individually by being in a community that accepts and supports us. Now we're able to actually build that society we've all been talking about. Because last year it was all about, why don't our leaders do the right thing? This year we've realized they're not going to do the right thing. We have to do the right thing. We need to start our own co-ops. We need to start our own way of growing our own food and clothing ourselves and doing whatever we need to do to build this new society, because we can't march in the streets and expect our leadership to turn around and do what we want. We learned that over the last year. Now what we need to do is build it ourselves, and that comes through that personal transformation that each one of us has as we empower ourselves with the help of that community. So I'm excited. I see people in Seattle starting workers' co-ops and just amazing things. They're not waiting around for corporate money or nonprofits or anyone else to do it. We're not waiting for any leaders, so-called leaders, to do this for us anymore. And that, I think, is the hope for the future. I think it's a beautiful thing, and it's going to be brilliant.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, self-empowerment equals taking responsibility. Wonderful. So Occupy Cafe operates solely on the generosity of the participants. So we very much are grateful for any contribution that you make. It's the gift economy. So thank you very much. Take this out into your life. As Ben was saying, just engage with someone else in your life. Take these questions and let's make a difference here.